you very much. Well, I'm sorry I was at a disadvantage. I have lots of wonderful notes, but I've lost my glasses, so I can't read them. And therefore, I will, somebody, yes, sabotaged. I like David, I obviously reread Orwell's marvellous essay on Dickens, in which he kind of lifts Dickens above politics, above party politics anyway, because Dickens wasn't the least bit interested in party politics. He thought that was a kind of rather corrupt game that went on at Westminster and didn't really do the country much good. But Orwell says that Dickens's message is basically that if people would behave decently, the world would be a better place. And that's not such a bad message, Orwell says. I think that Dickens, I would say, in the wider sense, obviously not in a party political sense, and Dickens wasn't, he did once get involved in party politics. He was, as many people were by the Iraq War, he was totally outraged, as many people were then by the Crimean War, and the catastrophic mismanagement of that war. And that was the only time that Dickens joined a political association, the Administrative Reform Association, and made a political speech, vigorously attacking the government of Lord Buxton. I don't say that it had enormous effect, but it is a very powerful political speech, certainly. So he could do that, but what Dickens was interested in, of course, like all great novelists, was the individual. And he wanted to, and did have, I think, a profound effect on the individual. So I really just want to make kind of 2 points. One is that Dickens had a huge political influence through his writings, through his novels, and not just his novels, but also his wonderful journalism. He had this crusading weekly journal, Household Words, which conducted quite successfully a number of political campaigns on precise subjects like, better housing for the soldiers' wives and so on. He campaigned against capital punishment and many other specific issues. But above all, he wanted to I don't want to make him sound like Princess Diana, but he wanted to kind of reign in people's hearts. I mean, he wanted to change people's attitudes to their fellow men. And he did believe, I think he gave, the great thing that he did politically was to give people hope. I think Orwell's 2 tremendous achievements, Animal Farm and 1984, are both rather terrifying predictions of the future, but I think they're much more bound to the world situation in the 1940s and even 1950s, whereas Dickens' work, I think, really does transcend the Victorian age, and we still George Orwell himself says, that nobody could go into a workhouse without thinking of Oliver Twist. Well, the workhouses have gone now. But I mean, Dickens has branded, we take a very word, Bumble for Bumbledom, for local authority, bureaucracy, and muddle and confusion and so on. With his great characters, Dickens sort of stamped on the English imagination. Something that's been very much renewed, I think, in later years by the great success of Dickens on television, that people who've never read the novel still were marvelling at the fact that although he might not have known, as David said, exactly how high finance works, he got the crooks right, in a sense, in Mr. Merdle, and the big swindle there. And when this happened with Madoff in the United States, everybody was reaching for their little Dorrits and bringing out Merdle as an example of Dickens' acute understanding of this kind of capitalism. I think G.K. Chesterton was probably one of the, along with Orwell, one of the greatest critics of Dickens, and Chesterton said that Dickens was not against any human institution so much as a certain expression on the human face. And the expression on the human face that Chesterton meant was a kind of rejection of brotherhood, a kind of belief that because of class or race or whatever, the person you were looking at belonged to almost a completely different species from you. And this is what Dickens hated. And in his mockery of the aristocrats that David has referred to, this is one of the things that he particularly attacks them for. But above all, I think that Dickens and Dickens's writings, which are political in the widest sense, I mean, they do give us a message of hope. I mean, in the last year of his life, he had an interview with Queen Victoria, and most of the time they talked about the servant problem and the price of butcher's meat and so on, which is rather extraordinary. But she did ask him in a rather worried way about class warfare in England and whether, you know, whether this was going to come to some terrible revolutionary situation. And he said he thought not, that people were, there was growing understanding between the classes, that it would come gradually. But he did profoundly believe in a better tomorrow, a better state of affairs, as it were. And he didn't believe it was going to be arrived at by party politics, not of the kind that was being practiced then. I'm not quite sure what he would have thought of what's happening now. But I think that that Orwell is a marvellous writer, of course, but you only have to read a few pages of Dickens and the what he does with the language, the literary creativity and so on, is quite astonishing. Anyway, I think that as obviously as a writer about party politics, I mean, there's no question. I mean, Orwell was a man with a programme. Dickens didn't have that kind of programme. People, of course, kept asking him during his lifetime. They kept saying, you know, what are your politics, what do you believe? And he did finally, in a speech in the last year of his life, he said that his belief in the people with a small p, the people governed, was infinite, and his belief in the people with a capital P governing was infinitesimal. And I think that really represents his political position, and I don't think it's such a bad one.